Radiant and Resilient is about mindset and faith to break paradigms and overcome challenges in our life. Because when the mind, body, and spirit are aligned, we literally radiate from the inside out. I'm Kay Vasquez. Let's dive in. In this episode, I really want to dive into the root cause of physical imbalances in the body. And I can definitely speak from personal experience around this topic because I've been on a journey. I initially started off as a physician assistant in Western medicine. And it's interesting because I really wanted to help people to heal. And I had my own health issues at the time, but I never went to the doctors except for migraines. I would go to the doctors to get relief from migraines. And they would prescribe different prescriptions, but the migraines continued to get worse and worse and worse. And it finally got to a point where I knew deep down inside that, just taking a prescription wasn't going to get rid of the migraine. I was determined to figure out what was the root cause of the migraine. How can I completely get rid of it? Because deep down inside, I believe that I could heal, that I could get rid of the migraines. But Western medicine wasn't going to help me in that path and that journey. And I'm so grateful that I discovered functional medicine because once I jumped into functional medicine, I realized there were so many things happening in my body that I needed to heal from that I thought was the root cause of the migraine. So I was experiencing a lot of gut issues at that time in my 20s, a lot of constipation, bloating, and like foul smelling gas. It was so bad. And the bloating, like I was literally flat in the morning when I woke up. And then I felt like I was like 6 months pregnant by the end of the day because my belly was just expanded and my pants would fit very tight. It was very uncomfortable. I didn't even want to go out and be seen, and go to the beach, wear a swimsuit. Like I was very self-conscious of how I looked because of the bloating. And so functional medicine was great because it really helped me heal my gut, but I didn't completely heal. So what I discovered was that, there were inflammatory foods that I was eating like gluten and dairy, and then later discovered tomatoes and red meat were also the culprits contributing to the bloating and gas. But on that journey of functional medicine of healing my gut, I even went plant-based. So it was gluten-free, dairy-free, plant-based, removed a lot of animal products. And I would still occasionally get bloated. And it got to a point where I felt so restricted. I was so frustrated because I'm like, well, what am I going to eat every day? I had no idea what I was going to eat. I felt like, the only thing I could really eat was just like very plain basic foods, oatmeal, salads, things like that. Because I was so terrified of getting bloated. And if you are currently experiencing that, where it's like there's all these issues in the body and you're changing things up, especially with your diet, and you're just taking this out, taking that out, and you're at the point where, you're just feeling so restricted, I get it because I've been there before. And so when I was, healing my gut, I knew that this wasn't sustainable. Like I couldn't live the rest of my life being so limited, so restricted. And so I'm so grateful. My husband and I, we eventually brought back in meat and animal products. I still avoid gluten and dairy, red meat and tomatoes, but I know that I can heal and that the root cause of the gut is more than, just eating inflammatory foods. I was also on supplements to heal my gut because I had overgrowth of bad bacteria and like very low amounts of good bacteria like lactobacillus because so many things, stress was the biggest factor that cleared out all that good bacteria. But also I was on different medications, birth control, took Advil for migraines, things like that. So I got myself off of those medications and really focused on healing my body naturally, focused on natural alternative therapies and remedies, things like that. But when I came off the birth control, I also had to support my hormones again. So I put myself on seed cycling and I took different supplements. And even though my cycles became regular again, I was able to reduce a lot of the PMS. I still occasionally would have cramping, or I still occasionally would have a long cycle, like my period wouldn't come on time. And I thought that was interesting because I'm like, I don't understand. I'm doing all the right things. So again, I'm like doing all the right things. I'm eating healthy. I am taking the supplements. I'm exercising. I was even doing yoga, meditation because functional medicine testing revealed high cortisol levels. And so I knew that I needed to make shifts in my lifestyle because I was getting up and checking social media, checking email, it was sending me into fight or flight. And then I'm like, get up and rush, 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 try to get everything done before I like started my day, went to work, and then I'd come home and like clean everything and then go to bed and wake up and do it all over again. And then on my days off, I would like run to the gym, go hit this grocery store, that grocery store, meal prep. So my days were just filled with a lot of doing. I was constantly doing so much in a day, it was catching up to me. And yeah, I had high cortisol levels. So I knew something needed to change. I couldn't keep living my life on this hamster wheel because it was affecting me physically in the body. It was also impacting my sleep. I wasn't getting good quality sleep anymore. So I started to make shifts in my lifestyle. And that's what we do, right? It's like, okay, if we don't feel well, it's like, okay, what shifts can we make in our lifestyle with what we eat and, exercise, things like that, adding in yoga, meditation. But again, it still wasn't getting to the root because I would still occasionally have gut issues and I would still occasionally have hormonal issues, like notice something was off with my period. And most importantly, even though functional medicine did help and then, yeah, making tweaks and changes with my lifestyle to reduce cortisol. My cortisol came back down. So testing showed high cortisol to normal cortisol. I still was experiencing migraines every month. So I went from 6 to 8 a month to 2 to 3 a month. And of course, me, who, if there's something wrong, like I'm determined to figure out how to fix it, how to get rid of it, because I like to feel my best. And so I was confused because I'm like, okay, I'm doing all the right things. Functional medicine, it's like heal your gut, avoid these foods, reduce your stress, improve your sleep, take your B vitamins and magnesium. And so I had learned about all the different root causes that was contributing migraine and I was knocking them all out, but I was still experiencing that. So I knew that there was still something more that I had yet to uncover. And so it sent me down this journey because I was doing a lot of mindset, personal development work at the time. So I understood how powerful the mind is and our limiting beliefs and starting to recognize certain patterns that I was healing and changing in my life when it came to like my relationship, my marriage with my husband. And I also was changing things, yeah, with my schedule. So I was doing a lot of work around that, but I realized that there was more to uncover when it came to my health. And that's the work that I do. One of the things that I do with clients is really get to the root. Like, yeah, you're having these physical imbalances, but there's a mental, emotional, spiritual piece that we need to dive into. But it's scary to go there. It's so scary to go there because most of us are walking around holding on to these emotions from things that happened in our past. So we're suppressing these experiences from our past because we're too scared to feel, such as guilt and shame and fear. Our body doesn't feel safe. So we suppress it all down and try to go about our day. But then we overcompensate, for what we felt in the past by trying to do more. And that is to validate us to feel like we're actually good enough, that we're worthy, that we are loved, and that's what I started to recognize is that the root of the migraines was so much more than a nutrient deficiency, than poor gut health, than hormonal imbalance, than, high cortisol levels. There was so much more to the migraines. And so I started seeking more answers of like, what do I need to learn? What do I need to discover? I jumped into plant medicine. My husband and I went on an ayahuasca journey. And I learned that a lot of it was mental and emotional because emotions are energy in motion. And yeah, because I had suppressed guilt and fear and shame for a very long time, it was manifesting physically in my body as migraines. After I did the plant medicine, I learned a lot, I healed a lot, but again, still haven't really figured out the root. I prayed to God. I prayed to God to ask, why me? Why do I have the migraines? And he revealed to me that the migraines, instead of resisting the migraines, lean into it and recognize that they're here to teach me something. It was a protective mechanism because when I would get into this pattern of doing more and more and more and more, it was creating stress within me. And so I would experience a migraine as a way for my body to protect me, to cause me to slow down. The lesson that I was to learn was that as long as I was feeling not good enough, feeling not worthy, and overcompensating by doing more, it was going to create the stress within me, which was going to trigger the migraine. And so it was my work to do to start shifting, recognizing, when I start feeling tension in my neck and my shoulder, it's like, okay, start tuning in. Like, am I taking on more than what feels good for me, than what's in alignment with me? Am I putting a pressure on myself, to do things a certain way, to do it perfectly? And how can I start to release that and let that go? Because I realized a lot of it was mental, emotional. It was tied to things from my past in order for me to feel like I was good enough and I was worthy. And so I share this with you because one client was experiencing these histamine-like symptoms every single month, or right after she'd, like, as soon as she'd ovulate until her period started, she had these histamine-like symptoms. She thought it was hormonal. So I'm like, all right, let's dive in. Let's start looking at different things. First, if it's hormonal, I always look at gut. I always started with gut in functional medicine. When I talked to her, I realized I saw so much of myself in her. I saw a lot of the similar patterns because she shared with me, I'm my type A personality. I have OCD tendencies, perfectionism. We talked about these different things, and I saw so much of myself in her. And I realized that there was so much more to going on internally that was contributing to her experiencing these issues every month. So we did gut testing, revealed overgrowth bacteria. And then once we went in to do the hormone and adrenal testing, I told her that the test showed, because she needed that science, that data to back up, to validate this is why I'm feeling this every month. And the test showed that it was not, in fact, hormonal. So she deep down believed it was hormone that was causing it, which rightfully so, because she was experiencing when she ovulated and right before she started her period, that 2 weeks prior, or less than that because her shorter cycles were shorter. But of course, I get it. Like, we can, it's so easy um, based on our experience, what happens, create this story that, okay, it's probably hormonal. But when we got the test back, it was not hormonal. Like, her hormones looked great for her luteal phase. It was not a hormone issue. What it was an issue was an overgrowth of bad bacteria, but also her adrenals had high cortisol, especially in the morning, high cortisol, and then it dropped off in the afternoon. So to me, there was adrenal imbalance. So when I see adrenal imbalance, yeah, we can say it's gut issues, but whenever I see wonky cortisol levels, I know there's something deeper going on. She recognized that every single day she feels like she has to do a lot in a day to validate feeling like she's done enough, to feel like she's good enough. She has that core limiting belief, I'm not enough. And I get it, because I had that belief too. And I would show up and operate the exact same way. Granted, she said she's made some shifts in her life, so she slowed down. On her questionnaire, stress was a 1 out of 5. So consciously, she was not as stressed as she used to be, which was great because she once had adrenal fatigue where her cortisol levels were low. So her body's starting to bounce back and adjust as she made adjustments with her lifestyle. But again, I felt like there was something so much deeper that she needed to address. Now, I could clearly see the patterns by, recognizing she's holding on to emotions. There's something happened in her life where she didn't feel safe. And so her body is protecting her. because she has all these things that she needs to do in a day, even though consciously she doesn't feel stressed. Subconsciously, she's still putting pressure on herself because she needs to validate this belief that she is enough because she has this limiting belief that she's not. And so, as long as she's operating from this paradigm, it's manifesting physically in her body because it's throwing off her adrenals. And our when we're in this fight or flight state because our body's trying to protect us, it's going to affect our gut. It sometimes also affects our hormones, which in her case, her hormones looked pretty good. I recommended some things to support her gut, to support her adrenals, but I knew that the deeper inner work started with her, but she had to be open in recognizing that and diving deep to start making shifts to recognize the pattern, because she is now at this point where she's anticipating this happening every single month. It's now become, well, part of her identity is I'm a type A perfectionist, have OCD tendencies. So that's become her identity because she's overcompensating for the fact that she doesn't feel like she's enough. So she's doing these things to feel like she's enough. And so, again, making just shifts and changes in our lifestyle isn't enough. We have to dive deep. We have to go back to those moments where we didn't feel like we're enough and fully feel those emotions. Because I realized when I did that, when I actually felt the guilt and the shame when I was a child and I did something wrong and it didn't feel like it was enough or I didn't do it right, I felt so much guilt and shame around that. And I had to let that go and be okay with the fact that it's okay to make mistakes. I'm never going to be perfect, and that's okay. As long as I focus on progress, not perfection, I am enough. And so, yeah, I can very clearly see how, there's so much deeper that's going on with her that's creating this physical reality because her body's trying to protect her, during her luteal phase every single month, because at the beginning of the month, she feels great. She has all this energy. She feels, like she can do all these things, but then her body is saying no. It's trying to protect her, get her to slow down. And most women come to me, they're doing all the things, seeing the specialist, but has anyone ever talked to them about the mindset, the mental, emotional things that they've been holding on to and carrying for so long that's impacting them physically in the body? No, no one has gone there. And that's what I am here to do, is to go there with you, to go deep and help you feel safe to go deep. Because once we can go deep and recognize the root, the emotions, the past experiences, the things that you've been holding on to, that you haven't allowed yourself to release because you're holding on to it to protect you, to keep you safe, when in reality, that's not happening anymore. And you are safe, you are safe, you are supported, you are loved. I'm here to provide that safe space for you. So if you're feeling any physical imbalances in the body and you've seen a lot of doctors in Western medicine, you've seen different practitioners in functional medicine, you're doing all the right things, but still something feels off in your body, still something's not getting better, it's time to dive deep. It's time to explore, what is the mental and emotional root of it all? Because once we can break free from that, that's when the body heals. That's when you have the energy to heal the body and you feel your best self. And then when you've broken free, like this podcast indicates, you're radiant. You become so radiant because you're now living in alignment with who you are. You're no longer afraid because, the things in our past, they're protecting us. They're protecting our inner child, that little girl, that little boy who didn't feel safe. But when we can come to a place where, now that we're older, it's like, no, we are safe because those things aren't happening to us anymore. And we have the power of who we allow in our circle to support us, to love on us, and really start to embrace who God created us to be, who we really are. It shifts everything in our life. So if you're ready to dive deep, reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. And we'll figure out how I can support you on this journey. So if you found this helpful, save it, download it so you can come back and re-listen to it later because there's so many gold nuggets. And send me a DM on Instagram because I want to hear from you. How did this podcast impact you today?